Hey, what's up, free thinklings? Welcome to another episode of Free Think or Die, hosted by Free Thinking Ministries. Hey, if you strive to avoid the groupthink of mob mentality, then you've come to the right place. You might not know it, but I'm Dr. Tim Stratton, and today we're going to be discussing what it's like to be a consistent Christian, not just a Christian, not just somebody who calls themselves a Christian, but a consistent Christian on the college campus in the year 2020. But before I introduce our guest today, hey, make sure to subscribe to the Free Thinking Ministries YouTube channel, like this video, ring that bell, and please, whatever you do, please share this video. Share it so much until it breaks the internet, because I believe that our guest today has a very important message. People need to hear it. Oh, and one more thing. If you're so inclined, and well, even if you're not inclined, please consider supporting Free Thinking Ministries with your prayers and with your finances. Hey, I will take your thoughts and prayers. I love thoughts and prayers. Please send them our way. I believe they make a difference. Thoughts and prayers are awesome, and if you can support us financially, that would be awesome, because your financial support makes videos and interviews like this possible. Not to mention all the other articles and content that you can find on our Free Thinking Ministries website, freethinkingministries.com. So make sure you're familiar with our YouTube channel and all the videos that we have here, and our website at freethinkingministries.com. So with all of that said, and without further ado, please welcome an Iranian-American and a Christian college student. His name is Mehdi Mahdavi. I hope I said his name right. Did I get it right?
Bro, you're right on there.
Now, you can say it in Farsi.
In Farsi, my name is Mehdi Mahdavi, but you can call me Adam, just so you don't sound like you're stubbing your toe in the dark.
All right. I appreciate that. I will call you Adam. So, man, Adam, I got to tell you. Oh, first of all, what do you think of my mask? Do you like that? I mean, you got the flag behind you. I just thought I'd wear it on my face.
Man, you're rocking it, bro. Awesome. loving that flag.
And I got George Washington on my shirt today.
He's armed and ready. He's
ready to go.
Yeah.
So, man, I feel like I've known you for a long time, but really we've only been talking for several weeks. But I can't recall how we first started talking. Can you help me out?
So I'm an internet troll right now, and it's a full-time gig considering COVID-19.
Yeah.
What one of your last guests, Monique, called Rona. So we'll just call it Rona. We'll just go with the flow with Monique. Rona came involved and disrupted the United States and the entire world, and allowed me to be on the internet a whole lot more. And I was just trolling and said something to you, and I told you that I was a university student.
Wait, let me stop you. Where was it? On my Facebook page, my personal page? Were we already friends?
I believe it was either on your page or it was Soteriology 101 with Leighton Flowers.
Okay.
Maybe.
I bet that's where it was at. That's probably where our paths first crossed, maybe.
It was. The first time you ever commented on me, I asked you about Molinism, and I asked you a litany of questions about it. I said, where did it start from? What are some opposite views? How many types of Molinism are there? Who founded it? All those kinds of things.
Right.
You
Okay.
gave me a lot of articles to read, and I've learned a lot.
Yeah. When was that, do you think? Was that Go ahead.
That was probably maybe a year and a half ago.
Well, was it really that long ago? Okay. Well, you and I really started talking a lot, though, recently. And
right.
When was that?
That was probably about a month ago, maybe a month and a half ago. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe a month and a half ago. And what was the context there? What were we talking? It wasn't Molinism.
No, it wasn't. It was Marxism. You were posting stuff about Marxism. You were just you were just learning about it. The way that I remembered it, you were just learning about it, and I was giving you some YouTube videos. A lot of other people were giving you YouTube videos and articles to read. And you even said on the main thread that you were trying to learn more about critical theory and critical race theory and Marxism. And I gave you some material to read. And I think I said it like this. I'm like, man, I'm not even trying to join you, and I'm not even trying to stand with you. But I mean, I'm a USC student, and I am, an Iranian. I don't know how that came up, but it did. And you're like, I want you to be in contact with me. And eventually down the road, you asked me to be on, the YouTube channel right now. And I got to say, it's an honor to be with you.
Well, the honor is mine. I got to say, the reason why I was so impressed when I started to hear your story and hear some of the things that you're going through, I realized that you are standing up to the mob. You're standing up to Goliath. Let's just be honest, who has the privilege and the power in this country right now? And it's scary for a lot of people, especially Christians. And it's scary to speak truth to power because they will cancel you today. But I started hearing your story and how you're fighting these battles on the college campus. I'll let you share that. But when I heard that, I recently had Monique on the show, like you said, Monique Duson with the Center of Biblical Unity, and I called her a hero. Well, she was reluctant to take that label, but I said, no, anybody that stands up to this current culture, this Goliath of culture today, anybody that stands up to that is a hero. Last week I had Wintry Knight on the show.
Awesome interview. Awesome.
He is awesome, an awesome Black man who is standing up against Black Lives Matter. Well, all right, and they will turn on him. Okay, hero, right? When you do stuff like that, you earn the hero status, and you are doing that on the college campus today, and you're taking a lot of heat. And so we're going to talk about that. But because you do that, welcome to the the League of Justice, or say you are a superhero, and you're a hero, and in my opinion. So thank you for what you're doing.
Well, it's interesting going in those classrooms, and you're wearing a shirt that shows you got to know what the Declaration of Independence says, what the Constitution says, and you got to have your talking points locked and loaded when you're going into conversations, and then you're going into spaces that undermine America, Christianity. You got to have your ducks in a row. You do.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a fight.
Well, do you say it was a fight?
It really is.
Yeah. So I want to talk about that more as we go on. But Adam, really, let's back up a little bit. Give people your origin story. Tell us a little bit about you and what makes you tick and how you got to this place.
Yeah, man. So my name is Adam Mehdi Mahdavi, and I was born in Columbia, South Carolina, and I've lived here all my life. My father is from Tehran, Iran, and my grandfather was an Ayatollah for Khomeini. Ayatollah Khomeini, the supreme leader of Iran, who overthrew the Shah in 1979. And my family, from my father's side, we actually go back 56 generations ago to, which is what they'll say. My family's Shia Islam. My father's still a Muslim, and he'll tell, if he were here today, he would not introduce me as Adam. He would introduce me as Syed Adam Mehdi Mahdavi. And Syed is a title that my family has and acknowledges. Whenever they go to the mosque, they'll wear like a green scarf around their neck to signify that they are Syed. Now, what does Syed mean? It means seed. Seed of what? Seed of Muhammad. And for 49 generations, we came from Muhammad's daughter, Fatima, and her relationship with Ali, his nephew. And from there, you have the 12 or the 13 imams. And, you hear the idea a lot in Islam that he's a 12er. Well, there's really 13 imams, and the Shia believe that the descendants of Muhammad, they ought to be in charge of all the politics and all the political and spiritual and governmental regulations in Islam. And so my family, we come from Muhammad. It's what I was told by my father.
Wow.
And we branch off at the sixth Imam, Al-Jafar Sadiq. Al-Jafar Sadiq was an Imam. A lot of the Imams under Shia Islam, they teach you through the Ahl Bayt and the Quran and the Sunnah, but mainly they tie in the Quran with the Ahl Bayt. And the Ahl Bayt is like a set of writings for them. It's like a commentary, an extra commentary to the Shia ideology. And so my family, we actually branch off from Muhammad's line, from the sixth Imam Al-Jafar Sadiq, Imam Al-Jafar Sadiq. And he was a philosopher. He was a scientist. He debated Christians. He has books. There's books about him. And my father actually is a Muslim leader in one of America's cities. I don't want to say which one, but he puts on events. He will rent out warehouses. He'll buy huge flags like these back here that represent Shia Islam, and he'll wave them inside of his warehouses whenever they're putting on Muslim events. For example, Mahram. I went to a Mahram with my father in 2010, and it was in the month of December. And the men would be divided from the women, and men would walk around beating their chests, hitting themselves. In other parts of Islam, they'll actually take chains and they will brutalize themselves. But with my father, he doesn't do that. He just allows the people to slap their chests. He'll order food. He'll get the imam to come. Now, my father's not an imam, but all of my family, they have been imams or ayatollahs. My grandfather, Syed Agajun Mahdavi, was an ayatollah underneath the supreme ayatollah. So that's my family lineage underneath my father's side. And my father came here when he was 16, supposedly, and met my mom years later. And my mom was a barber from South Carolina, a farmer's daughter. And here we go. When I was 2, my family divorced. I come from a 2-time broken home. My mother and father divorced when I was 2, and then my mom married a Scotsman. And my mom likes immigrants, apparently. And so actually he left the family when I was 14 and actually died of drug overdose in 2009. And hold on, my computer is actually running out of battery. I'm going to have to hold on for a sec before I lose you.
This doesn't put me in an awkward position at all. I'll just try to say hi to what's going on out there, everybody. I wish I had some questions for you to, talk amongst yourselves. I don't know. It's not good. I got a good article coming out next week. You're going to like, if you've seen The Walking Dead, if you like zombies at all, you're going to like it. It's I think one of my most creative articles that I've ever written. So make sure you tune in for that. It'll come out Monday on freethinkingministries.com. Instead of The Walking Dead, I'm calling them The Woking Dead. Yeah, it's going to be good. The Woking Dead, you got to watch out for them. So hopefully Adam comes back. Next week on the YouTube show, we've got Kelly Fitzsimmons Burton. She's a philosopher and an epistemologist, And I've learned a lot from her and her work, reading her work. I even quoted her in my doctoral dissertation, which will come out soon. If you don't know that, it's being published by Whiffenstock. I think it's coming out this fall. Hey, hi, Jamie. Adam's mom is here joining us. Hey, Adam's calling me.
Okay, we're good. We're back.
You're good. All right. I tried to fill up some dead space.
Sorry about
Kind of
that.
awkward. No.
Yeah, I'm sorry, man.
So is that your mom, Jamie?
Yes.
Yeah, she's on. She's saying hi.
Hey, Mom.
So, hey, Adam's calling.
Okay, we're good. We're back.
You're good. Well, that's weird. All right. Anyway, so Adam, where were we?
So my family comes from Tehran, Iran on my father's side, and then my mom is a South Carolinian, and that's who I am. That's a little bit of my family. But the reason why I was telling you that I come from a two-time broken home is because I know what it's like to come from a fatherless home. I know what it is like to cry yourself to sleep for years, wondering, am I worth anything?
Wow.
Because my father doesn't want me, and what's my purpose? And feeling like nothing, like no one ever wants you. That's a really bad place to be in, and I can speak in those kind of spaces because when I got saved in 2010.
And how did that happen? I got to interrupt.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
So after high school, graduated high school in 2006, I went to a satellite school from one of the main colleges in South Carolina, and then went there for about 4 years. I was a frat boy. I was working for Sears Holdings Corporation, and I was one of their management interns at a local store, a local Sears store, and I was also seeking out, Islam. I was studying Islam.
Right.
I was getting close to my father. My father connected with me after I graduated high school, and he started talking to me, and that was the relationship that I had always wanted, was with my father. And that started happening, becoming a reality, but something was still missing. And I had a hospital experience when I was in my home one night, and it put me in the hospital. I couldn't breathe, and all I remember was having trouble breathing. I was very angry. I had just come back home from one of my Beta Theta Pi meetings, and I just remember saying some very nasty things to God. And then moments later, I started having a lot of chest pain and had to go to the hospital. Thought I was dying. And when I was in the back of the ambulance, I saw my heartbeat go from the 80s to the 70s to the 60s to the 50s. It got down to the low 42s, which is, average. Maybe it's good for an athlete sometimes, but for me at that moment when in pain, I remember looking at the back of the ambulance, and I remember looking at the nuts and bolts of the car, and I said, whoever you are up there, I'm really sorry I said those things. Please don't let me die. And I started gaining some acceleration in my heartbeat. And a couple months later, I told my dad, I was like, Dad, I'm going to go check out what the Christians have to say at this church right down the road. And I did that, and Christians were coming to me, challenging me. And one day I was getting in my car.
Was it loving and respectful challenge or not?
It was a bit of a mix. What was happening was I was telling people that I was studying the Quran, and I was trying to understand Christianity. And I remember even my mom telling me that I needed to believe in Jesus. And I told her that, if God was going to send me to hell for not believing in him, then, that's on him. That's a character fault on him, not me. I remember saying that to her. She was witnessing to me hard back then in 2010. But on July 4th in 2010, on that Sunday, I saw my sin for what it was. It was disgusting, and it was an offense to God, and I deserved hell. And I knew that if I died on the way home that day, that I would go to hell. And I received the Lord as my Savior right there. I knelt down in the parking lot, and I received the free gift of salvation. Only Jesus Christ can have the power to cover my sin. It doesn't matter whose blood runs through my veins, but whose blood covers my sin.
Oh, well said.
Had the impact on my life and my heart. And ever since then, God, Jesus Christ, and the Bible has my allegiance, has my loyalty, has my undying devotion. And if I die, I know where I'm going. I know where I've come from, and I know why I'm here. And that's why I went to college, because I want to make sure that those kids have an opportunity to know where they're going to.
Wow. What a great story. Our friend Slam RN, she says, I'm a cardiac nurse, and this is interesting. And she's exactly right. And also, hey, my mom is watching too. So your mom's watching, my mom's watching. So, hey, just, party. Well, thanks for sharing. Now you said, I interrupted you because you said you became a Christian in 2010. I said, oh, how'd that happen? But you were about to say, maybe you did cover it, but you were about to say how, I think maybe how your life changed after that.
Well, one thing I also want to talk to is that when I remember being very young, now I told you that my stepdad was Scottish, and my stepdad, his name was Chris, and he was an amazing man. I told you that he died in 2009 of drug overdose, but he was an amazing thinker. Being around him was just fun. He made thinking fun. You know what he used to do? He used to take my mom knows what I'm about to say. He used to take my mom's jewelry and bury it somewhere in the yard, and then he would make me a treasure map, and he would give me clues. He just made everything fun. He introduced me to skateboarding. I have a skateboard video on YouTube you can check out. Just YouTube my name, first and last name, and you can see my skateboard videos, and you can see my ultimate frisbee videos too, because I can throw some disc, bro. And when that disc is in the air, it's mine. So he was fun to be around. He was awesome. And one day when I was very young, and I was either like 2 or 3 years old, he said to me, Adam, just use your imagination. And that opened up a new world to me until I went to my dad's house for the weekend. And then my dad, he was doing something, and I unknowingly rebuked my father. And I said, Dad, just use your imagination. And he didn't like that. And I just remember after that, I don't remember exactly what he said, but after that, him saying something to the effect of, we don't have imaginations, or you don't have an imagination. And that stuck with me for the rest of my, K through 12 education in the public school, because I grew up in the public school system. And I remember being in elementary school and middle school and thinking I didn't have an imagination. Whenever my teacher said to use your imagination, I couldn't, because I didn't have one. And I thought I was slow. I thought I was stupid. And actually, I just started skateboarding when I was in middle school. I got sponsored.
Did you?
Winning skateboard competitions.
Wow.
And I couldn't think with my mind, but I could move with my body. And so I never thought I had an imagination. And when I made that skateboard video, the very same video that's on YouTube that everyone can go and see, it's a 3-minute video. I showed that to my father after I graduated high school, because after I graduated high school, he became interested in me. And he's like, Mehdi, you got to go to college. He always called me Mehdi. He's like, Mehdi, you got to go. I said, Dad, no, I graduated high school with a 2.6 GPA. I don't have an imagination. I can't go to college. He said, Mehdi, there's no way that you can do what you do on a skateboard and not have an imagination. And right then, right there, it was like my father, gave it back to me. I had confidence, and I actually went to college in a satellite school that was like an off branch from the main university, and I did well. I did very good in college. I actually aced my first college exam, which was in a purchasing class. I used to be an HRTM major, then I switched it to accounting before I got saved, and now my major is education. And so we'll talk about that in a little bit. But ever since I got saved, I became a Christian. I've been a Christian for 10 years, Brother Tim.
Yeah.
10 years. And I remember going to Bible college after I became a Christian, because I dropped out of my college. I left. I'll go ahead and say it. I left USC. I'm at the University of South Carolina. I'll say it. But I left USC, and I quit my frat. I quit my corporate internship, and I dropped my accounting degree. And I wanted to give everything to the Lord, to my Savior. And I went to Bible college, and in 2011, I took their entrance exam for grammar and English and composition. Dude, I made like a 20-something. But over the past 10 years, I mean, even in 2012 and 2013, I spent my summers with a grammar and English composition tutor. And I remember going to her office in the summers of 2013 and 2012. And I was just learning how to diagram sentences, learning how to match, verb, connections and things like that. And I remember just building my framework, learning how to think. And I was searching, God, how do I think? And for the past 10 years, I've been seeking in that endeavor. And it's been a journey.
Now, you were you said a Christian Bible college for a while, right?
Yes, sir. I went to,
Yeah, go ahead. Where were you at? What Christian school?
I went to Ambassador Baptist College in Lattimore, North Carolina. It's 2.5 hours north of Columbia, and
okay,
it was good. It's a great place.
And you graduated from there?
Yes, sir. I graduated. This is kind of funny, but it took me 7 years to get a 1-year Bible certificate. I was paying my own way.
Really?
I was working, minimum wage jobs. I never had like a carpentry or like a landscaping skill. So I just worked as a full-time front desk agent at a hotel in Shelby, North Carolina. And halfway through into the first 3 years, I had to move back to Columbia. I worked another 3 years so I can go back to Ambassador to finish what I had started. And the Lord called me to go to USC after I finished Ambassador. But while I was finishing Ambassador in 2017, I was also finishing a 3-year correspondence training program with Faith Bible Institute, a correspondence Bible institute from Monroe, Louisiana, from Rolling Road Baptist Church, Dr. John Yates. And I finished Ambassador and I finished Faith Bible Institute, FBI, in the same semester while working part-time at a Chick-fil-A in Gaffney, South Carolina, 35 minutes south of Ambassador, and got both degrees in May 2017.
All right. So tell me this. You became a Christian and you left USC, University of South Carolina, and you're getting all these degrees in Bible at Bible colleges. And then now you're back at USC. So tell me, why did you go back to this public secular university?
So over the past 9 years of being a Christian, I just know I'm called to be a teacher. Not just because people tell me that I should be a teacher, because a lot of people have told me that, you should be a teacher. I love being in an academic setting. I love engaging with people in their intellect, asking questions, just digging into the meaning of things. But I like to do it in person. I also like to study, and I like to, tell people what I have studied. And I love to see people learn. I love to see the light bulb come on. And I know that people can look at that and they go, why are you going to a secular university? God's called me to finish what I started at USC. And I didn't quit the ambassador pursuit of getting a degree there. I didn't quit FBI. And I'm not going to quit on USC and finishing that degree. I'm going to finish what I started.
So that, would you say that's your goal, or what is your goal of attending a secular public university as a Christian?
So godly ambition needs to counteract wicked ambition.
What do you mean by that?
I mean that there's nothing wrong with having the desire to have positions of authority as a Christian. There's nothing wrong with that. But if we neglect getting into positions of authority just because we don't want to look prideful, or just because we want to really don't know how else to say it. I believe that Christians, we need to seek positions where influence is going to be made. I believe that either political positions where you need morality needs to be filled by Christians. Teaching positions need to be filled by people who love Jesus Christ, who think like Jesus Christ, who reason like Jesus Christ, use the logic from Jesus Christ out of studying God's word, God's law. The Old Testament is fulfilled in the cross of Jesus Christ. The New Testament fulfills it, and it can renew the mind. And when a person is a Christian, they know how to access, they know how to tap into the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And they need to be in the positions that have influence, that have wide spans of influence. If Christians do not fill those positions, Dr. Tim, Dr. Stratton, then wicked men will fill those positions. Men that are greedy, men that
they have. So we need to take those back, and you're doing it in the right way. So I really encourage you. I mean, I look back at some of the great teachers I had growing up. I was not the best student, but I did pick some things up from them here and there. But I remember many of the teachers being awesome Christians, and everybody knew it. And they did have a big influence and an impact on my life. So let's talk about now you're back on this secular public college campus. And things have changed a lot, even since I was on a secular college campus back in the 90s. Well, I mean, when I was there, I felt like it was really a place to share ideas. You could disagree with your professor. You could disagree with your classmates. You could argue. You can, but it was good at the end of the day. But now things seem to have changed, and I think something called critical theory or critical race theory has infected multiple departments across college universities around the nation. So much so that even where I got my master's degree at Biola University, some departments there, some critical race theory has infiltrated it. So I've talked a lot about critical theory and critical race theory here in the past, and you can read more about it on freethinkingministries.com. So anybody out there watching this, and you're like, what is critical theory? We'll probably get into that, but let me ask you this, Adam. How are students being convinced of this critical theory, also called critical race theory, or this cultural Marxism today that first of all, would you say that it has infected, if you will, the university campuses around the country and your college campus? And if so, how are students being convinced of this cultural Marxism?
Well, Dr. Stratton, professors are not professors. I blame the professors. A lot of the executive positions, they may be filled by, either liberals or conservatives. Maybe if you're blessed, it's going to be filled by a Bible believing Christian. But I laid the problems in this country, in the universities, at the feet of the professors. Now, let me put a disclaimer here. I don't think that every single university professor is a Marxist, communist.
Right.
There are Bible believers.
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah, I know some great professors here at my local university too who are Christians, and I work with them on a regular basis. But you're kind of saying, by and large, these ideas have impacted and infected college campuses.
Yeah, absolutely. And I say that professors, they're professing advertisements. Professors are supposed to profess the truth. Professors are supposed to profess that which makes sense. God puts a lot of emphasis on teaching. The Great Commission, Matthew chapter 28, Acts chapter 1, verse 8. The Great Commission is supposed to, stay in our hearts, and it's supposed to be our banner. We are supposed to be in the positions that have control over what goes into the minds of young people, especially our children, and in America, our public school students. Ephesians 6:4, Genesis 18 and 19. God knew that Abraham was going to raise his family, and his family was going to be just. God saw that, and that's why he chose Abraham in Genesis 18 and 19. Exodus 10:2, God puts emphasis on teaching your children. Deuteronomy chapter 4 and verses 5 through 10, God puts an emphasis on teaching your children. And over in the Old Testament as well as the New, God puts an emphasis on his people to be the people with the truth. How vital is it for Christians now to take back teaching supremacy on the superiority of truth with the magnanimity of love? I'll say that again. We are supposed to have the authority in the teaching superiority on the superiority of truth and the magnanimity of love.
Well, I can't even say that word.
I couldn't either. It took me a while.
Yeah. One thing that Susan says, who's Slam RN here, she says, if we can keep it. And she says, I think we have lost it. Do you think we can get it back?
There's going to be a purging. There has to be a purging. I'm at the university because God has called me there. I know he's called me there because he has given me grace for victory. It's not an easy place to be. And God has granted me victory, and he's granted me a way to speak with my professors and my students. I'm telling you, Dr. Stratton, these are not professors that are infiltrating the minds of our youth with Marxism, socialism, and communism. And yes, communism is alive and well on college campuses. If you don't believe me, if you don't believe us, you can just turn on the television or get on Twitter, YouTube, and just see what's going on in Portland, Seattle, Chicago, and New York. These professors, they're not really teaching. They're more like marketing agents, and they're advertisers. They're critical race theory apologists. These are marketers that are limiting the student's ability to have conversations, ask good questions. If you ask a question that undermines the teaching of critical race theory or the white supremacy or the white privilege ideology that's coming from Robin DiAngelo into the university systems, or the Abraham Kindys, or the Nicole Hannah-Jones, or the Ava DuVernay's 13th documentary that's sweeping the country.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, if you challenge those ideas in the university system, in the class.
And what ideas in particularly?
The ideas that America was built off of racism. Everything about America has racist, and it appeals to white privilege.
Mm-hmm.
And if you question those ideas in the university, in the classrooms, you're going to be either made a fool, or you're maybe at the same time, you're going to lose some friends. Hardly anyone's going to talk to you, and you just may sacrifice your A or your B or your good grade because the professor is going to have his eye on you whenever you turn something in. And so
wait. Are you speaking from experience here?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that. I mean, have you stood up to these lies? Have you challenged these, as Paul would call it, the shallow philosophy in class? And what's that like? I mean, I think one time you haven't mentioned this yet, but you're married to an African-American woman, right?
Yes, sir. I love my wife, and she loves me, and we are swirlers. We are mixers, and absolutely, my wife is African-American. Love my chocolate, my boo, my Hershey's Kiss. Absolutely.
All right. So you're Iranian-American. She's African-American, but I think I've heard that you've actually been called a racist before, or am I right? Because you have stood up against this idea of whiteness being bad and against this critical theory. So yeah, tell us about that a little bit.
So whenever I am in the classrooms, I'm trying to come at it just like Paul does. I want to reason with my professors. They're questioning truth. They're questioning how to think, good, logical thinking like Christ is logical. And it's not very logical to deny the existence of God, to make God out to be a monster, or to make Christians out to be monsters and not representing both sides of an issue, and just omitting the good things that Christians have done, or omitting the fact that, hey, maybe these people that did wicked things, maybe they weren't Christians, because Ravi Zacharias used to say, you can't judge an ideology by its abuse. Whenever people were abusing Christianity, that's not representing Christianity. That's disobeying Christianity. So when I'm in these classrooms and I'm talking to these professors, I'm in there with my heart beating, with my hands getting sweaty. I'm nervous, and at times my voice is chipping, but I know that I need to say something, not to persuade the professor. I'm not at USC to persuade my professor. I am at USC, and Christians need to step up for Christ in front of professors if they're at secular universities, not for the professor. If the professor gets saved, wonderful. Yeah. If that happens, if they're honest enough to admit they're wrong and to have an open mind and to re-examine the evidence in which they've not seen, or maybe have at one point in time overlooked, that's a good thing. But Christians need to step up, and I wanted to step up because I wanted to plant a seed of doubt about Marxism, about socialism, about communism, about the things that the professors are saying to these Christians, our students. I want to plant seeds of doubt, and I want to do that through questions in a respectful way. The way I'm talking to you right now, I'm trying to control myself, and it's exciting. I want to engage these professors, but I've got to let the Holy Spirit lead. I got to choose my battles. And the reason why I do this is because this is a biblical model. In Acts 17:2, Paul reasoned with people in Thessalonica. In Acts 17:17, Paul reasoned with people in Athens. In Acts 18:4, Paul reasoned with people in Corinth. Yeah. He reasoned with the people in Caesarea in Acts 24. Colossians 4:6 says that in the KJV that let your speech be always with grace, seasoned with salt, that ye may know ye ought to answer every man. And I'm in those classrooms challenging these ideas, challenging these narratives, so that I can plant seeds of doubt in the minds of the students about what the professor is saying, and so that I can empower some other students to disagree and to actually think to say what they think in the classrooms. I've had this happened multiple times over the past year that I have returned to USC, and I would love to tell you some instances. One instance was when the professor called me racist, which is what you were alluding to earlier. I had given a testimony of me being in North Carolina in Bible college and going door knocking, inviting people to church. And I had spoken about a low socioeconomic neighborhood. And I told of these two boys that I had taken to church, and they had neighbors that had six kids. And the 6 kids were brothers and sisters, and they were all white. And the other two kids, the neighbors, they were black. And of the family that had 6 children, none of them had the same dad. And the man that was living with the mom, the family that had 6 kids, the neighbors, none of the children had the same dad. There was 6 individual fathers with the same mother. And I took them to church along with the 2 young black boys. And eventually I was just taking the 2 black boys to church. And the reason why I say that I bring up the significance of the family of 6 not having fathers is, we suffer from fatherless homes. And these 2 black boys that I took to church with me, they didn't have a father either. But I remember I would take the kids to either McDonald's or Bojangles or Burger King, and before and after church, and I would try to be a blessing to them. And they were younger than me. These were like toddlers. These were kids that would maybe be in your Awana program or your young, before you hit the youth group stage. And these were young kids. But these 2 young black boys, one time we were eating at Burger King, and one of the boys just looked at me and said, "Adam, I love you." And that was the story that I told in the university classroom. And a week later, after I told that story, the professor told the class about Robin DiAngelo's White Fragility book, and said to the class, "Last week, Adam gave a testimony, and I don't think Adam was trying to be racist, but there was some language in what he said that I have to apologize for as a professor. As a professor, I should have stopped him, and I should have asked Adam what he meant by the neighborhood and the boys that he had described. And class, I just want to tell you that I am sorry for not stopping Adam and his testimony last week. I'm sorry." And so that entire class period led to me interacting with 4 other students and the professor. And one of the students actually accused me of saying that their kid, their child, because one of the students had a child, and it was a special needs child, and that I was in some way diminishing their value. So she was twisting what I was saying, but the Lord gave me wisdom. I was able to not answer a fool according to her folly, but I was able to answer her according to her folly. I just used the same type of logic that she was using. I used that on her. And then everyone in the class was like, "Oh, no, that's not what she was saying." But I took her logic and I showed her how silly it was to say that about me. And then another student said, "Well, you don't need to call it a underprivileged neighborhood. You need to call it for what it is. You need to own your racism and just say that you're a white man going into a black neighborhood," which I'm Iranian.
Yeah.
If Obama, who has a white mama, is black, then Adam, who has a white mama, but who has been affiliated with Osama, can be called Iranian.
Yeah, right.
So I told the student, I said, "You know why I didn't call it a black neighborhood? I didn't call it a black neighborhood because there's white and black people in that neighborhood. Now, blackness is, you want me to say it's a black neighborhood because it's poor, but That's a stereotype. Having the stereotype that just because it's poor, it's a black neighborhood, that's actually racist. And I'm not going to say that about black people, because not every poor neighborhood is black. There's poor white people, and there's poor black people. And then another young man spoke up in the classroom, and he's like, I've been quiet long enough, and that got people laughing. And he was saying something of the effect that I needed to divulge myself of whiteness, and I need to become anti-racist.
Yeah.
And what I did right there was I tried to take a talking point from Ravi Zacharias about the purpose of a university, seeking unity in diversity. And I was trying to persuade the class. I was persuading the class about the need for growing together in the things that we were learning, and that we could be one. We could be one at college, learn together, and be united. And we didn't have to be at each other's throats. Yeah. And then the professor started attacking me, and it was apparent to everybody what she was doing. It was apparent to everyone who wanted unity and who wanted division. I had students come up. That took up the entire class period. The entire class period was focused on me, and I didn't mind it. I actually gave the professor a high five in love after the class, and I enjoyed it because I got to expose darkness for what it was. I got an opportunity to be the light in that classroom. And I'm not saying that just to puff myself up, because that may have been one instance. But if I'm ever in that situation again, I need to have that same courage in Christ and do it again. Just because I did it once doesn't mean that I'll always do it again. And so that humbles me and makes me depend more and more on the Savior. He gave me victory, but I need not get a puffed up head. I need to continue to believe and rely and be loyal to Jesus Christ, because that's where the power comes from and the unity comes from. We are all level at the cross, but every Christian should be shouting out the equality and the unity and the justice in Jesus Christ. And if we can shout that loud enough, as you say, we need to shout loud. Yeah. We need to be shouting the unity and the oneness we can have in Jesus Christ, that magnanimity of love that is available in Christ, the overwhelming awe at being loved by your Creator, and being in a reciprocal relationship with your King, your Creator, and your Savior. Mm-hmm. We need to be shouting that, whether we are in the universities, street corners, occupations, political positions, businesses, no matter where we are, even in religious buildings, we need to be shouting that, because wherever it's infecting
the church too.
Yes, at the cross is level ground. Mm-hmm. We are all equal, and at level ground is shouting ground.
Well, I've been saying a lot lately that we need to be proud, loud, logical, and loving. And that's what Christians need to do: be proud, loud, logical, and loving. And
we need to take it back.
Yeah, go ahead.
We need to take back the office of teaching. Teaching superiority, teaching supremacy is a Christian thing. Christ gave us that commission. And there are people out there that say, well, we're just waiting for Christ to come. Or, doomsday is right around the corner.
Yeah, that's a mistake.
Prophecy, future prophecy, I'm talking to Christians now. Future prophecy does not give you a reason to dismiss or undermine the Great Commission, where Jesus says, ye shall be witnesses. It does not say ye shall be judges. It says witnesses unto me, both in Jerusalem and all Judea and in Samaria and unto the uttermost parts of the earth. And in Matthew 28, Jesus says, go ye therefore and teach all nations. And then in verse 20, teaching them to observe all things whatsoever I have commanded you. Lo, I am with you, even unto the end of the whole earth, teaching and the position of teaching, the superiority, the authority of teaching. That is a Christian thing. We have allowed the liberals and the Marxists and the ungodly, the atheists, the postmodernists, the modernists, the people that don't know truth, that think that you can have yours and I can have mine. We've allowed those people to tell us what wisdom is. You need to be quiet and you need to stay in your corner, preacher, because it'll be wise for you. At least if you do not stay quiet, we're going to tax you, we're going to fine you, or we're going to sue you. So it would be wise for you to just stay in your corner and not say anything. It'll be righteous. You need to do the righteous thing and have a separation. You need to acknowledge the separation of the church and state in America. It'll be the right thing for you to do, the wise thing for you to do, to stay in your corner and not say anything in a public domain or in a political position or in a position where you have a business or a position at a university or a position on the football or the basketball or the baseball field. If the right thing to do is not to be divisive with religion, the right and the wise thing to do is to be quiet. We are supposed to be the people that are wielding wisdom and wielding righteousness. Deuteronomy chapter 4 and verses 5 through 8 say that God gave the law to Jerusalem. God gave the law to Israel for other nations to look at them and to see wisdom and righteousness. And we saw that happen when the Ethiopian queen came to King Solomon in 1 Kings chapter 10, where she saw the servants, what the professors would say, slaves. The Ethiopian queen saw them in order, happy, fed, and well-dressed, and all organized. She saw the wisdom and the righteousness that Solomon was obeying and carrying out based off the word of God. And she was like, I've never seen this before. Not the half of it was told unto me. I want to know your God. That's why God gave the law to Israel. Yes, the law reveals our sin, but the law back then, David said that it makes me wiser than my teachers. The law, David said and that it was good for him, and that the heart of God can be trusted when you knew the law back then. But we Christians, we have a greater law, the law of Christ.
That's right. We
have what you wrote about just a few days ago in your article, Jesus is Racist. You mentioned that Galatians 6:2 verse where it talks about we need to have the law of Christ and fulfill the law of Christ. My friends, my Dr. Stratton and everybody else that is watching, we need to fulfill the law by faith, to not do away with it. Everything that Jesus Christ did on the cross, it fulfills every single religious institution that God gave the Israelites. We can eat shrimp. We can eat fish. We don't have to walk less than a mile to church. God, Jesus Christ, God the Son, fulfilled all those religious, ceremonial, traditional laws on his death on the cross and his resurrection. But all those laws that were given to Moses as far as the civil law and laws for society about not killing, not stealing, not coveting, not envying, those laws need to be upheld. But we as Christians, we need to wield that sword. We need to be bold and stand for our Savior. We are obligated to speak about the Lord and how he has fulfilled the law in his death, burial, and resurrection. We don't stone homosexuals today. We reason with them like Paul did. And that's what I try to get across in the universities. I try to show them through the grace of God who has given me victory to go back into those university corners that there is a God in heaven, and I am not scared to talk about him. I am not scared to challenge you, and I will show darkness for darkness with the light of Christ, and I will try, with relying on the Lord, I will try to show foolishness for the foolishness that it is, stupid for stupid, and we need to do that. We need to stand up, Christians.
Amen. Well, you mentioned that article that I wrote. It's actually called The Great Commission is Racist, but the image that I used said Jesus is racist, like somebody graffitied it on the wall. But the point remains the same. What I tried to do there was show that, the Great Commission tells us to tell the whole world about Jesus and how to be saved. But there's more than that. Jesus also says, and teach them everything that I've commanded. And that's what you're talking about, the law of Christ. And then when you start to look at the law of Christ, everything that Jesus has commanded versus social justice issues, critical theory, critical race theory, these things are opposed. So ultimately, like Black Lives Matter affirms this critical race theory. Well, that's opposed to the gospel. That's opposed to the Great Commission. And so then it doesn't, you're obviously, like you said, you're from Iranian descent, yet you're being called white. You've got to divest yourself from your whiteness. Well, what does that mean? It's because you're holding to the teachings of Jesus. And so I'm pointing out in some of these articles lately, including the Great Commission is racist, is that what is called racist today doesn't really have anything to do with the color of one's skin. It has to do with the beliefs they hold. It's an ideology. Is Jesus right? If you believe Jesus is right, then guess what? You're a racist, and you need to divest yourself from white culture. Well, it's not white culture. It's a Jewish culture from 2,000 years ago. It's Jesus culture is what it is. And so, it doesn't have anything to do with race.
Can I say something else about what the professors are doing?
Yeah, go ahead.
So it's really interesting how so much of Louis Farrakhan, Stokely Carmichael, Angelina Davis, how Marcus Garvey ideologies are still permeating our society today, and they have almost created a critical race theory spiritual awakening. It has almost been a revival of race baiting and racism that we really haven't seen since, that one burst in Los Angeles, I think in 1990 or 1991, but we really haven't seen it on a national scale since the 60s and 65 riots and 68 riots. And so what is really happening in these universities is that racism is becoming a polarizing issue, like your guest said a couple of weeks ago, Monique Dobson. I say it right?
Dusant. Monique Dusant.
Monique Dusant. Yeah. She said that when you divest yourself from whiteness, it'll eventually turn into Christianity. That's exactly what's going on. That's what they're prepping for. They're planting those seeds.
Well,
and here's what's going on.
Yourself, let me
these
Adam,
professors.
Can you hear me?
These marketers, these advertisers. Sorry.
Can you hear me? I just wanted to clarify something. You said if you divest yourself from whiteness, it will turn into Christianity. I think what you meant is what they are saying is you need to divest yourself from whiteness, but what they really mean, well, Christianity is next on the chopping block, right? That you need to divest yourself from Christianity. You need to stop being a follower of Christ is really what is the end game, right? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I apologize if I said that a little weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I got you now.
Yeah, I apologize if that broke up, if I said that a little weird, or if the internet was breaking me up there. Can you hear me now?
Yep. So go on. What were you gonna say?
Yeah, these professors, they want you to divest yourself of whiteness, and later on down the road, like Monique said, it's going to turn into Christianity.
Yeah,
absolutely. And one of the ways that they're doing this is to have this self-fulfilling prophecy. They're talking really mean about Christians. One of the examples that I would like to get out there is Christian missionaries. So one of the talking points in history classes is that Christian missionaries that went to Asia or Africa or Europe or South America, those Christians, from the professor's perspective and from what the professors are saying in the universities, they're saying those Christians went to those places and they earned the trust of the natives. And then once the Christian missionary, earned the trust of the natives, Christian missionaries went back to the U.S. or sent word to the U.S., and then the U.S. brought in the Marines and the military to take over the natural resources that belonged to those respective natives. And that is how they create seeds of bigotry and bitterness and hatred against the Christians and capitalism and the Constitution. So we can sit here and we can talk about it, but eventually we have got to do something. And when I'm in those classrooms, I'm trying to pinpoint and give stories of how missionaries did not do that, but that's what they are saying and misrepresenting the Christian missionaries as doing. And that's one of the ways they are creating their converts to be adversarial against Christianity. They're making Christians look like greedy imperialists that betrayed natives. That was one of the talking points in one of my classes last semester.
Well, speaking of your classes, several weeks ago, we had a talk on the phone, and you told me that you were a wrestler in high school, right? Or in your younger days, you were a wrestler. And you were talking about how you
yes, sir.
How you felt just going to class every single day, and that you would get nervous just going to class. And I told you, hey, just think about it like this: did you like wrestling? And you're like, yeah, I was really good at it. And I was like, well, just think of this as a spiritual and a mental wrestling match. Have you seen anything change since you've kind of shifted your mindset and kind of taken a wrestling attitude towards the classroom?
You know what I listened to for my second semester last year? You know what I listened to on the way to class when I would walk like a mile to the classroom from the parking lot? You know what songs I would listen to?
What?
I would listen to Rocky Balboa. I would listen to a couple of his songs, his instrumentals, right. Especially War.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man, I was on the way to the debate class, and I would play the songs. Yeah,
man, that's a great soundtrack.
They'd get me pumped up, man.
So, I mean, you've mentioned some of this.
Well, yeah. Can I say something else?
Yeah, go ahead. What's that?
That's okay. We can go on to the next point if you want.
Okay.
Is the internet? Can you hear me? Is the internet really bumping me out?
Sometimes I think I'm talking, but you're not getting me. I don't know what's going on, so apologize to the viewers. But we seem to have a little bit of a delay going for some reason, but we'll get through this. All right. So you've mentioned some of what's going on in the classroom, and some of these tactics. What about the students, though? I mean, obviously, you're not drinking the Kool-Aid. Kool-Aid was invented just like a few miles from me, I guess. So we talk about drinking the Kool-Aid here all the time. But do you think? I mean, is it most of the students? Have they all? Are they all drinking the Kool-Aid, or how many other students like you are willing to think critically and to are willing to logically engage and to push back on what they're being taught?
Well, I think a lot of students are thinking critically, but they're not engaging the professor with the adversarial approach that maybe I would. They are thinking critically, but they're thinking critically to agree with most of the students are thinking critically to agree with the professor. I think most college students, they do not know how to synthesize a lot of information over a long period of time like we Christians are taught to do in our Bible. We're taught how to synthesize Genesis and Deuteronomy with the New Testament. We're taught how to take a lot of historical events and connect them with theology.
I'll just say this. Some Christians are. The church needs to do a better job. but we are, you and I are, and I try to teach my students how to do that and how to synthesize. But yeah, we've got some work to do. The church hasn't always done that, but you're right. Christians should do that. I think that's the goal of any Christ follower should do that. But and many of us do. But yeah, we can do better.
The students, what they're doing. This is what the student who is just coming out of high school, this is what they're exposed to. So they're not looking at the professor as someone who's going to lie to them. They're going to the professor as someone who is a doctor and they are educated, and that professor the professor has information that will make them wiser, and they are going into these classrooms trusting what the professor says. And so they're not really trying to do some extra research that looks at a different side of history from what the professor is saying. More students do not have the time to research another perspective, because think about it. You have 5 classes, you have 16 hours, 17 hours, you have 18 hours, you're working a part-time or a full-time job. How much time do you have to devote yourself to go to Wall Builders or PragerU or spend 2 or 3 extra hours per class just to come up with a different perspective from what the professor's telling you? That's a lot of work. I'm having to find myself doing that just to have a different perspective, just coming back into the university, not knowing a whole lot about critical race theory, not knowing a whole lot about a different perspective on slavery. What did the founders do? Why didn't they do more? That sort of thing. And I have answers for those, but it takes time, and students really, they're really pressed to come up with other views in the classroom. They're only given one view. They're only given one side. And let me put it like this. Let me say this. You go to a classroom and the professor tells you that Christians went to Africa, kidnapped Africans, brought them to the Caribbeans, and treated them horribly, and then brought them to Virginia and brought them to South Carolina. And these were Christian people. Well, you never heard that in your life. And then you hear that, the Spanish Christians came over to the Americas and they gained the trust of the Native Americans. And these Christians gained the trust of the Mississippi Indians, but then they betrayed them over silver and gold and lied to them. These were Christians, and you don't really want to ask questions as a student. You just want to get a good grade, and so you'll put that in the paper. And the more you hear something over and over again, these seeds begin to take root and grow, and you start to believe something over and over that you've heard over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And it's crazy how you just hear something over and over and over again, and you start to believe it. But here's another thing: when you start hearing a one-sided view of history, the professor does this. This is clever. The professor does this. He or she will ask the class, "Have you ever heard of this before?" What do you think the answer is? No. And then the student will say, "I don't know why my high school teacher didn't tell me this, or I didn't know why I didn't learn this before." And then the professor says, "What if I told you that no one wanted you to know how Christians treated the Native Americans, or how Christians went over to Africa and kidnapped the Africans and made them slaves? No one told you that because they didn't want you to know. How does that make you feel?" That is a very clever tactic when you're just teaching one side of history to students, planting a seed of bigotry and contempt and animosity against Christians, against capitalism, because capitalism's tied in there too. It's the Constitution, conservatism, Christians, and capitalism that's being attacked.
And so you push
Like
back,
that.
though. You push back when you hear that stuff. And how does that, do you plan? I mean, we're getting ready for a new school year coming up. How do you plan to push back? And what's your plans for this next year? What's going to happen?
So one of the tactics that I use in the classroom is to ask the professor where they're coming up with the information that they're just synthesizing from the articles or from the magazines or from the textbooks. For example, we were talking about Confederate statues one time. We had been given an article from a freelance journalist. Brian Palmer was the author, and the professor, she said in class, and I'm not saying Confederate statues need to be upheld. That's a conversation for another time. But I am more concerned with how the professor is teaching the class, and I'm wanting to know where she got this information. And I challenged the professor, and actually, this was day one. You have to set the tone on day one.
Wow.
For all your classes. You have got to let your teacher, professor know that you are going to come in there and you are going to stand your ground, and you are going to call out wrong for wrong, and you're not going to stand for it. And it'll make your semester a lot better, because here's what I did. I asked the professor about the Confederate, statues, and I agreed with the professor that for the subject matter, but I said, this article that you gave us, it doesn't have any references, it doesn't have any citations. We don't know where this freelance journalist got his information, because the article said that the freelance journalist went to Kentucky, went to Tennessee, went to North Carolina and Georgia and Alabama, and looked at the state's tax records and found out that the state had built and preserved Confederate statues. Now, if that happened, okay, but where's the proof? Where's the citations? There's no citations to the information that you're giving us. And then the professor started talking with another student, and she started talking about a hierarchy. The hierarchy is not even mentioned in the article. She just said this, and I thought it was an assumption that was made in the article that didn't need to be. And you need to address these. We need to address these assumptions in the conversations with our professors, because this is what I did. I said, well, in the article, it doesn't say anything about a hierarchy. So where are you getting that? You know what her answer was?
What?
She said, I got it from my head. I said, but you didn't get it from the text. And so if you didn't get it from the text, that's just in your imagination, not something that I need to believe.
Huh.
And we need to do that. I did that in front of those students. And
Now,
she said, well,
where do you draw the line between pushing back and also respecting them as a professor? I mean, we're called to be loving and respectful to our professors, even though we want to challenge their thinking. How do you do that in a respectful manner? Also while trying to influence your...
You don't do it all the time.
You what? Say again?
You pick and choose your battles. You don't do it all the time, but when, hey, the left they are bullies. They are bullies. And yes, we should be loving, we should be kind, and we need to be respectful, and we need to ask questions. And I asked the professor, I said, why should I believe word of mouth? And because you have your academic freedom as a college student, you have that freedom to ask questions. You have your freedom to say what you want, and you should not be bullied by the professor, by the marketer, by the advertiser to believe something or to not say something your conscience, that the Holy Spirit is urging you to voice out. We need to be light, but we do need to be respectful. So how do you balance that? I would say don't call him or her stupid. Don't call them names. Do not give any kind of judgment calls. Do not give any value judgments. Just say, why should I believe that? And why should they believe that? That's a legitimate question. If it's not documented and if it's just coming from your imagination, then the article, and it's not coming from the article, why should I believe it? Why should they believe it? I believe that is a legitimate question. It's a hard question to ask your professor, but it's a question, and we should be asking those questions, because when assumptions are made, when it's not plain or obvious or intuitively self-evident, then we need to stick with common sense, lest we be left with nonsense.
Yeah, I can remember that one. Man, I'm just thinking what it must be like, just a daily battle when are you in classes right now?
I'll be taking classes this coming fall. I have 2 more years in the university system.
Okay, good. Well, keep us posted. Now, you've done some work already. I was going to ask you this. Have you read Greg Koukl's Tactics? That book called Tactics that he wrote?
So no, I have not. No, okay. I have it on my reading list.
I think you should read it, because I think you can kind of apply his tactics in the classroom. You might have to tweak them a little bit, but yeah, I'd encourage you to read Greg Koukl's book called Tactics. He's just had I think the 10-year anniversary of the book, and he expanded it. That just came out recently. And so the viewers out there too, get Tactics by Greg Koukl. It's one of our favorite books at Free Thinking Ministries. And I think you can really employ these tactics, asking, what do you mean by that? And, it's just really asking questions. You're not calling anybody stupid. You're helping them reach their own conclusions. You're just kind of driving the car, letting them do all the talking, which the teacher is supposed to do most of the talking. But yeah, you'll have to check that out and let me know what you think. I've also, to those watching, asked Adam to start sending me some snippets of some of the papers that he's writing in these classes. He shared a little bit with me, and I said, that's article worthy on freethinkingministries.com. We need that in the form of a blog. But let's get you on the YouTube channel first and get people to know you a little bit, and then we'll publish some guest blogs from you. How's that sound?
Yeah, I would say this about the Greg Koukl book. I do want to read it. And, actually one time I was on Soteriology 101, and I was talking with another Christian, and he said to me after the conversation that lasted about 2 days, he's like, man, you used Columbus to a perfect T.
The Columbo tactic. Yeah.
You use Columbo perfectly. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And he goes, oh, you've not read Greg Koukl's book? Because you act like, you played it out just well. And what I was really doing in that conversation, and what I try to do in these college professors, is I do try to ask, hey, what do you mean? Can you say that another way? And we need to get clarity. One of the professors, we were talking one day, and I asked the professor, what did she mean when she played the video? I said, so what are the main takeaways from that video that you just played? Because what the video showed, Thomas Jefferson getting his ideas for the public education system from some place in Europe that was, it was an interesting way of saying that Thomas Jefferson got his ideas from a European totalitarian, and it was, I said to the professor, what do you want to take away from that? Do you want us to believe that Thomas Jefferson got his ideas from totalitarianism, or do you want us to understand something else? And you know what the professor said? She said, no, I don't want you to, that's not what I want to take away. That was not my intent. I go, okay, so we can kind of just throw that to the side. We don't really have to believe that from the video. And she's like, well, and she just kind of like, da. As a matter of fact, talking about white privilege, I talked with that same professor just last week. Last Monday, I talked to that same professor through Skype. And the professor said to me, Adam, you as a white person, you have whiteness, and that gives you an advantage in America because the laws were made to appeal to your white privilege. And I said, well, okay, so let me ask you a question. You believe in white privilege, correct? And she said, yes. And then I said, well, do you believe in the Declaration of Independence where we are all created equal by our Creator? She said, yes. I said, well, how are you saying that I am created with privilege, but I'm also equal to my black friends, to my black brothers and sisters? How can you reconcile those? Those seem to be contrary
to your wife.
What's that?
Equal to your wife.
Yeah, and you know what she did? She started talking about redlining. That is a red herring. That too is unconstitutional. How does that make up for the fact that the white privilege that you believe in and that you say that I should divest myself of is reconciliatory to the Constitution, which says we're all equal by our Creator. If we're equal, we don't have certain natural privileges over the other.
Yeah. So, would she say, well, we are all equal? I'm just trying to see things from her perspective right now. Would she say, was she trying to communicate that we're all equal, created equal in the image of God, but we're not all treated equal? Do you think that's what she meant?
Yeah, I think that she would try to push the idea that even though we're all created with natural rights, that we don't all have equal civil rights. And I would say that, as a person who is born in America, who loves the Constitution, who loves the Declaration of Independence, the Declaration of Independence grants, or it doesn't even grant us rights. Rights do not come from the government; they are natural rights. But she wants to, try to create a divide with the civil rights, and I would say right now in America, where a black student or an African American student, they can get affirmative action, they can get Section 8 housing, food stamps, where there are civil rights laws that make businesses have a quota of black people working for them. I would say that we have civil laws now that appeal to black civil rights. And so now there is no white privilege as much as it was in the 60s and before that with Jim Crow and the vagrancy laws after the Civil War during the time of slavery. So I would say that right now in America, we have equal civil rights, but I would even say that the blacks or African Americans, they have more privilege than just your average white person in some areas.
Do you have these conversations with your wife?
Yes, I do.
How does that go?
Yeah, it goes really well.
Did she?
Yeah.
Would she agree with your views here? As an African American woman, would she? What's that?
Yeah, I believe she would. Now, would every African American agree with me? Let's say, like maybe one of your friends, Adam Coleman. I have no idea. Wintery Knight. I believe Wintery Knight would agree with what I just said.
Well, it'd be fun
based
to
off of this conversation with you last week. Yeah.
Wintry Knight brought up a good point. Like I said last week, I said I haven't really made I guess I haven't landed on a firm position yet if I believe that there's any, I like to call echoes of racism. There might, because definitely there used to be, I think we could say there was systemic racism in the past. I do see your point saying that, hey, we've done so many things that we've really kind of won that battle. But I could say, well, maybe there's still some echoes of the racism of old, and maybe we could call that systemic. I don't know. But Wintry Knight, as a black man, he said, no, he goes, it's not true in my case. He said, I was born into poverty in another country and made it to America, had to start from scratch, and he's now a millionaire. And he said, this is based not on the color of your skin, but by the choices we make. If you make God-honoring choices and logical choices, you do well. And if you don't, you don't do well. And it doesn't matter the color of your skin. So, I found that interesting. And I'd like to ask.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, what were you going to ask me?
I was just going to say, I'd like to ask Adam Coleman to speak to some of the things that you and Wintry Knight have said. I know that there'll be, I know, well, I'll just table. I don't want to speculate right now, but go ahead.
So I was speaking with a city council member just last week at dinner, and he was talking about the redlining, and I can understand how the redlining has residual effects. I could understand how a black neighborhood that was underdeveloped and underprivileged before Jim Crow and after the civil rights laws, I can see how the housing value of that neighborhood may still be low like it was back then pre-civil rights, and how other white neighborhoods have increased in their housing value. And so what I would agree that the value of those neighborhoods, those black neighborhoods, they prevent some black communities to not have the ability to create wealth. I would agree with that. I would agree 100% with that. What I fail to agree with is that the government needs to take over all housing and needs to decide who lives where and needs to make everything equal as far as housing. Now, I don't think Adam Coleman would say that. I don't think he would say that at all. And I believe if we're going the communist, the Marxist route, that's what's expected. But what's even better, what would be a better option, would let the neighborhood or the house be bought or sold to another black company or a person that has knowledge of how to flip these neighborhoods around and make them more valuable as a private corporation or as a private housing guy in the housing market, for them to do it privately, and they can turn it around and they can increase the value as a private business. That would be better than the government doing it, like a lot of people say, and I agree with that, is that the government is not meant to control who lives where or who gets to live in a similar type of house than another person. The government should have no say in that. A private business or a private company should go in there and do it, and they'll do a better job than the government. They'll make it more valuable than the government ever will in a capitalist system. But here's my thing: does the economy or does the market value of those neighborhoods that were slowly or less more valuable than other neighborhoods, does that control the decisions that a young black man makes as far as finishing high school, not having a baby outside of wedlock, and going and getting an education? Does the redlining from the pre-Jim Crow era, does that effect of the redlining cause him to make bad decisions now?
So now you're getting into philosophy and causal determinism and libertarian freedom, which is what I love to talk about. And I was just thinking about this earlier today, that so much of what we're hearing assumes a causal determinism, and they try to get away from individual responsibility.
Who's they?
The critical race theorists in general, right? So I'm just saying, so much of what I'm hearing is
so the critical race theorists are pushing a philosophy into an economical and a behavioral situation. They're trying to put too much in the mold there.
I feel like a lot of the comments I've been hearing, and I've been thinking about kind of putting pen to paper and writing an article about this, but I think a lot of it, often anyway, assumes a causal determinism. And so if one has libertarian freedom, then a lot of this, some of their arguments would, they wouldn't have any teeth in their bite, in the bite of the objection. But anyway, I think we need to start wrapping this up. I think one question that, really quickly, I see, could you define redlining quickly? That's not my last question.
So
yeah.
From my understanding, redlining is when certain people, a people group could not get home loans, or they could not get loans from a bank. They were limited because of where they lived to get financial loans from the bank. That's my understanding of redlining, and how it connects to the Marxist ideology that being pre-Jim Crow, back then you could not get financial assistance from the bank because of either your skin or where you lived. And from the Marxist perspective, today, post-civil rights, that trickle-down effect, that domino effect, by not getting the ability to create wealth pre-Jim Crow, affects blacks today, harming them from not getting the wealth, the financial, economical wealth today. So from the Marxist perspective or the socialist perspective, from the critical race theory perspective, those decisions back then still affect them today. And so what I was saying, and what I think Wintery Knight would agree with me about, and what I think, and I hope others would too, is that pre-Jim Crow economical disadvantages for one people group does not determine the choices that a people group make in order to create economic wealth today in the 21st century. Yes, it may limit the value or of a neighborhood, or the ability to create wealth back then and accumulate it through the 60-year period where we are now, but that's a given. And America's not perfect. We have a history, and it's going to be a reality that those market values are going to be lower. But to say that blacks today are incapable of making good choices, of graduating high school, not having a child out of wedlock, staying in the family, being a father, or staying a mother, staying committed to your spouse, is a result of redlining back then, I believe is a philosophical push and a shoving a circle in a triangle peg, and it should not be.
Yeah, and I would just say I think that's a philosophical mistake. We need to distinguish between influence and causal determinism. And sure, I think some people, I think I could be put in a situation, in situation X or in situation Y, where situation X would be easier for me to make the right choice than if I were in situation Y. However, that doesn't mean that I can't make the right choice in either situation. But those are interesting topics, and I think it's definitely good to say no, causal determinism isn't the case here. and have those conversations there. But then be honest enough to say, hey, at least there are influences, and we need to discuss how some.
Can I say something else?
Yeah, go ahead, please do.
I would say the Black community in America, they do have a perception of police brutality. They have a perception of systemic racism. And what I believe we white Christians, or we white people, or even me as an Iranian-American, what I should do is I should come alongside my Black brothers and sisters, Christian or non-Christian. I should come alongside them, and I should understand, I should listen, and I should try to see what they are seeing, because they do have a perception, and perception is reality. And there are things that we can fix. The founding fathers never said America was as good as it ever is going to be. It said a more perfect union. We are striving for a more perfect union. And there can be so many things about policing, about the education system, that is not what it should be, in order to let the Black community have trust in it. Trust is the lifeblood of a relationship. And if the Black community cannot trust the police, cannot trust the education system, cannot trust any kind of institution, then we need to figure out what it is that is causing that. And we need to do, as Deuteronomy says, diligently inquire. We need to make diligent searches, and we need to find out what we can do so that our Black brothers and sisters can become good stewards of the things that has been put in their possession. And we need to do that. We should not just say, oh, you have nothing to complain about. I do not agree with that 110%. What I want to do is create a campaign, and I'm kind of switching gears here, if I can say this on your show.
Sure, go ahead.
I'm trying to create a campaign that is addressing the issues, social justice issues, policing brutality issues, education issues that the Black community is perceiving and that is feeling. This pain is real, but I'm trying to create a campaign that solves it, not from a Marxist perspective, but from a Christian, from a biblical perspective. Good. Because Black lives do matter, but the organization is a Marxist organization, and Christians, we need to counter that while addressing the same issues that Blacks see, but from a Christian stance. That's and right. I believe if Black people see us doing that from a Christian perspective, they'll come alongside us, and I believe that's what they want us to do.
Yeah, that's goes along with the Center for Biblical Unity and biblical justice here. We want to take a biblical approach to this, because we have really good reasons to know that the Bible corresponds to reality. So if you care about reality, and you look at the evidence and the data, that's what apologetics is all about. We have really good reasons to know ultimate reality and see that the Bible corresponds to that. So when we seek to discuss justice, we need to look at biblical justice, not social justice or any other kinds of justice. We need biblical justice because it corresponds to reality. Well, let me ask you one more question, and this is the one that I think a lot of people that are going to be watching this video care about, because I really kind of promoted this one on social media. And I said, should you send your students to public secular universities? So what would you say? Would you recommend Christian parents to send their students off to the public secular university, or would you tell a Christian student who is maybe making their own decision, who's a Christian, would you tell them, hey, go, should they go to a secular university like what you're doing right now, or should they go to a Christian university? So what would you say here? What do you recommend?
I would say it depends. That's the famous lawyer answer. It depends. And like what you were talking about last week with the wintry night is that, some people need to be in the realm of, making money. And God has gifted some individuals with that ability. And God has gifted his body in different ways. Not everybody has the same gift. And that needs to come into consideration. Your spiritual gift needs to be considered when you're choosing a college. You need to seek the Lord in prayer. You need to I would say fast and seek the Lord. But I would also say this: if you are the type that is timid or shy, or maybe you have a gift that is not maybe of the mouth or of the face, you're maybe more of like a hand or a foot, and
There's nothing wrong with
you
that.
really do nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
If you feel like you do not want to be in the situation where you are fighting and you are arguing, you are exposing bad arguments. If you believe the Lord has gifted you in other places, then honestly, I would not recommend you to go to a secular university, because they are going to give you one side of the issue. They're going to omit things. And if you're going to be too burdened to do some extra research, because you have to do the extra research, because they're going to put seeds of doubt in your mind about what it means to be a Christian and a follower of Christ. They're going to show you, they're going to say, this is what Christians have done in the past, and that's going to affect you. But if you're a person and God has gifted you with speaking or with discernment, and he's given you a certain level of that, and if you're a go-getter, and if you are a person that's not scared to get into a fight, and you're a person that wants to stand up, be vocal for truth, and if you believe God has gifted you with that ability or that spiritual gift, and it is a spiritual gift, it's not natural, it's a spiritual gift to correct spiritual darkness. If you believe God has gifted you with that, then I would go. But know this, that it's going to take a lot out of you. You're going to walk in those classrooms at a secular college. Your hands are going to be sweating. You're going to be nervous. But God has commanded you to fear not and trust him and rely on his grace. If God can save you from hell, he can save you from a little bit of an embarrassment from the professor.
Yeah. Now, embarrassment is one thing, but do you see students who are going to the college campuses, the secular universities, and then losing their faith because they weren't prepared to defend it, or things like that?
Yes. Answers in Genesis did so many studies on this with the Barna group, and I can understand. I totally get it. They are the secular college is good at advertising life without God. They are good at marketing critical thinking and being reasonable through philosophy and science without God. And they make it look really good. That's why it's dangerous. That's why it does work. And that's why I would tell you, Christian, that if you're thinking about going to a secular college, then you need to take your spiritual gift into consideration, but you also need to take into consideration what degree you're going to get. If you're going in for like engineering, if you're going for like a science, technology, engineering, or mathematical approach, maybe like a STEM field, you won't have that many history classes or literature classes. You may have it for like one semester or 2 semesters, very, very few interactions with that. And the rest will be, objective, science-driven, scientific method-driven, which they're trying to promote as racist today. Right. But
I think a lot of scientists are going to push back on that. They have to, for science to survive.
Brother, I'm taking heed to Wintry Knight's advice and reading Thomas Sowell. I'm also reading a whole bunch of other stuff by Charlie Kirk, the founder of Turning Point Ministries, and also Ben Shapiro, and also Wall Builders. And I'm on Hillsdale online colleges, online free internet college classes, and the science fields are becoming more postmodern than you and I would like to see. And actually, you know what? Can I say this, Dr. Stratton?
Let me hear it.
When I went to USC, I was expecting to come up against the LGBT rhetoric. I was expecting to come up against, atheism from a science perspective, or atheism from like an LGBTQ plus perspective. Right. That's not what I got. I got the white guilt, the Christian guilt. This is what Christianity has done in the past.
No, I think you're right. So I lead a Reasonable Faith in Ratio Christi chapter at the local university and help out there. But I have seen it. We started that probably back in 2012 or 2013, maybe. And back then it was against atheism, and the atheism that was coming from the science departments primarily, and really interacting with that. And then the LGBTQ thing came, and we were dealing with that. But yeah, there's been a shift, and I think it started around 2016, actually. There's been a shift back to postmodernism. I remember when my pastor moved here several years ago, and I was fighting all the atheists on campus. When I say fighting, I mean having logical arguments with them, right? And he said, well, and he had moved here from Boulder, Colorado. And he said, Tim, I think the real danger is postmodernism. And I'm like, postmodernism? I've been there, done that. Everybody, they look both ways before they cross the street, and they read the directions on the back of their medication. If it says take 2 pills in the morning, they don't take 4. And he said, no, it's a bigger deal than you think it is. Well, then a couple years went by, and I woke up and I couldn't believe my eyes. He was right. Postmodernism is back in full effect, stronger than ever. And that's what we're dealing with now. And so much so that I think so many of the atheists that I used to argue with, who are science-minded, and what the argument was, what view fits better with science, and I think Christianity does, they disagreed. That's where our argument was. We were having logical conversations, and now all of a sudden you've got this other crowd that wants to reject logic as racist. And so now you're seeing, it's really, maybe this is a silver lining. You're seeing some of the atheists and the Christians who've been arguing with each other now kind of joining forces, saying, wait, we're focused on logic here. And now we've got a large segment of the population that rejects logic and rejects science and even rejects mathematics as racist. Well, this is a sad and scary place when math and science and reason and logic are rejected. And in fact, my article coming out next week on our website is going to be addressing that. But Adam, we better wrap it up. Yeah.
Yeah. Can I just say one more thing? I want to illustrate what this self-fulfilling prophecy looks like. Can I just read one last thing before we go?
Sure.
So I got this worst case scenario illustration, and it really shows what is going on in the university that we got to attack, just like David did with Goliath. It goes like this. In the university, they're using fear, and they're using guilt, and they're using shame, and that is the wrong use of the imagination. It is anticipating the worst and not the best that can happen or has happened.
Wow.
So there's a story of a salesman driving on a lonely road one dark, rainy night, and he had a flat tire. He opened his trunk, and there was no lug wrench. He headed into the pouring rain, started walking toward a dimly lit farmhouse. And he thought to himself, surely the farmer would have a lug wrench he could borrow. Of course, it was late at night, meaning the farmer would probably be already asleep in his warm, dry bed. Maybe he wouldn't answer the door. And even if he did, he'd probably be angry at being awoken in the middle of the night. So the salesman, picking his way blindly in the dark, stumbled on. At one point, he became so drenched because of the rain that the farmer started to complain to himself and started to think about the worst case scenario. And he started thinking, even if the farmer answered his knock, he would probably shout something like, "What's the big idea waking me up at this hour?" These thoughts made the salesman angry. What right did the farmer have to refuse him the loan of a lug wrench? After all, here he was stranded in the middle of nowhere, soaked to the bone. The farmer was a selfish clod, no doubt about that. The salesman finally reached the house and banged loudly on the door, and a light came on inside, and at the window above opened, and the voice called out, and it said, "Who is it?" His face white with anger, the salesman called out, "You know very well who it is. It's me, and you can keep your blasted lug wrench. I wouldn't borrow it from you now if it was the last one on earth." And this is the type of mentality that is creating a self-fulfilling prophecy that between the races on campus. It's the wrong use of the imagination. And 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 3-6 says that when Christians come into contact with imaginations that exalt themselves against the knowledge of God, it is our duty. We are obligated to be obedient to God and cast them down.
Amen to that. Well, Adam, thank you so much for being on our show today. I'm looking forward to publishing some articles from you in the near future. And please keep us posted about how things are going on the college campus this next year. So again, thank you for your friendship. Thank you for your encouragement. And God bless you, brother. Well, I just want to encourage everybody to come back next week. We will have Kelly Fitzsimmons-Burton on the show. Again, a philosopher and epistemologist. And we're going to be talking about properly functioning faculties and things like that. We're also going to be discussing how epistemology can relate to some of these current issues dealing with critical theory. So make sure you're back for next week. Until then, stay reasonable.